It's 10 a.m. here in the Netherlands, so let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. And welcome to today's edition of Energy Tech Talks. This is edition number 10 and the last one for this season. My name is Martina Cavalier. I'm the marketing manager at technologycatalog.com, and I'll be your host for this session. Today's webinar is organized together with IKM Testing UK, and we're excited to bring you a presentation on SOCOT, Safer, Smarter, Cleaner Offshore Turbines Oil Management. The speaker joining us today are two industry experts from IKM, Connor Reid, Energy Transition Business Development Manager, and Scott Morton, Energy Transition Business Manager. Throughout the session, feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll address them during the dedicated Q&A at the end of the presentation. Connor and Scott, over to you.
Thank you very much, Martina. Firstly, a thanks to yourself for hosting and giving us the opportunity to close out the Energy Tech Talk sessions. A little bit about myself. My name is Connor Reid, as Martina mentioned. I'm the Energy Transition Business Development Manager at IKM Testing in Aberdeen. What that relatively long title means is that I'm working with Scott, who will introduce himself in a moment, and the rest of the energy transition team in developing our services related to the wind sector, which we'll go over some of those here. And the separate focus of ours is the decarbonisation efforts. And in terms of my tenure at IKM, I've been with the business for around 13 years now. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the presentation goes. Scott, on to yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Morton, the Energy Transition Business Manager here at IKM. So I work with Connor. I suppose my primary focus is to develop and deliver our services within the energy transition, specifically around renewables and emissions reduction. So that's me in a nutshell. Cheers.
So the general agenda for the presentation today, we've got a little bit about Gen as a company, an overview of some of the services. I'll touch on maybe more of our traditional services, and then cover off our services related specifically to wind, which is obviously a more interesting topic for the agenda of today. We'll then go into an overview of SOCOT, what that acronym is, where you can benefit from the process, cover off how oil is managed traditionally on your wind assets. We'll close off with a sort of step-by-step walkthrough of an animation which we've developed and which will cover off the various benefits and hopefully close off with some nice questions near the end. For those that maybe aren't aware of IKM testing or the IKM group, this slide kind of covers off an awful lot of areas within industry that we work in. But the way I've been round this off recently with when practicing this presentation and giving it recently is sort of aimed to have a reach where we can cover support of a project from its very early stage, construction, pre-construction potentially, through to actual operation, and then through to decommission. So, an example I'm giving is if you have an asset, an example asset being fabricated in a shipyard or a fabrication shop. Doing the fabrication, we can be in that site, doing commissioning, initial integrity testing, proving that what is fabricated is fabricated to the right level. We then move to that asset in field or on station. We have services in-house to deploy to site and conduct or repeat tests to ensure that asset is operating at its conditions, its active life. And then at the end of an asset's life, we have decommissioning and a suite of services which can support that end of life stage, making sure an asset is ready to be taken offshore, dismantled, deconstructed in a safe and clean manner. And that's a very, very broad stroke. But what you can see on screen here is we cover off many different parts of industry, and we really aim to be one of the most complete energy providers to service providers to the energy sector. The next slide covers off a little bit about the group itself. Now, I represent IKM Testing here in Aberdeen, which is a part of the UK organisation. What I want to show here is the breadth of our operations over the globe, because service that can be provided out of the UK, or out of Aberdeen, can be exported to any of our facilities around the globe. And I appreciate that the technology audience isn't UK or Europe focused. We have members from all over the globe, and if there isn't a pin in your respective nation, it doesn't mean we cannot work with you in that area. It just means we would look to work with the nearest suitable entity of IKM to support your activities. There are 14 pins around the globe on that map there, and that is likely to grow in the next coming years. But in that 14 pins, there are 76 pins around the globe, with around 3,300 employees ready to support for any of our operations. Brief, 1-2 slides. IKM Testing in Aberdeen. I appreciate we're here to talk about SOCOT, but it's always worth getting a little bit of the history and where we've come from. So in Aberdeen, IKM Testing UK as a whole was established back in 1998, the IKM Group. Aberdeen, or the Aberdeen organisation, I tend to say lay somewhat dormant until about 2010, where our colleagues in IKM Testing US, our parent company, identified that there's a real scope for growth within Aberdeen. Anyone who's worked in this corner of the country or in the oil and gas sector knows the marketplace here, and was an resource to move the facility and really be developing it. And came from that reinvestigation of Aberdeen was the acquisition of 5 or 6 real key people to the business at the time. A lot of those key members who came on board at that point are still with the organisation, or the recent history. The director, regional director, who was one of those key members who transitioned to IKM Testing, was with us until March, where he's recently retired. Another one of those key members has taken his place, and I've really benefited from consistency in personnel from our early sort of invention days to today, where we're probably outgrowing the facility, and our growth is just on the trajectory. As of today, we hire around about 185 permanent staff in Aberdeen, and that is fastly growing. I know there is more plans for hiring this year, and we don't see that slowing down anytime soon. Facilities wise, prior to the F14, we were 2 facilities in the Aberdeen area. By F14, we invested in building this bespoke facility that I'm sitting in today. Although, as it stands right now, we are planning 2, one smaller facility as well as this one, because of the demands, the growth of our services. I'd urge, I know, as I mentioned earlier, technology capable audience is global, but if anyone sits in the local Aberdeen area, you're always welcome to come along to the site. Whether there's a need or not, have a coffee, and we can show you the facility. We've got a fantastic your team who won recent awards with the process that put in place. So welcome anyone to come along and have a look. Our client base, for those maybe who are operating in the wind sector right now, I look at this and struggle to see where wind fits into this, and surely away from the fact this is very focused on an existing client base. But what it does highlight is the caliber at which we operate here. On the board here, you've got the three major vessel providers for the sort of Aberdeen market. We've held long-term agreements with those organisations, the longest standing being 10 plus years now. You've also got some major operators in the energy industry and organisations who are transitioning some of their core business into the sort of the wind sector. So I want to just highlight in this slide here that whilst on the board it's not a depth of wind related organisations we've worked with, it's a very the expectations of IKM are very high, and we've operated at that level for a number of years. Here to talk more about less about personal history and more about services. So the content of this presentation is around SOCOT, which stands for the Safe Oil Conversion on and Offshore Turbines. And that falls under our turbine fluid management, so to speak. So that's for the SOCOT, we have cooling medium replacement, and increased replenishment, and oil rejuvenation. And those are sort of the four core pillars of that management service that we can offer. And complementary of each other. If there's a need for one on a site, it's always worthwhile considering, can we come out and do both at the same time whilst you've got a CTV in field, whilst you've got technicians on your asset. We don't cover off the bottom three in any detail in this presentation, but if those spark any interest, at the end there is contact details, so I urge it again. So high voltage, medium voltage, low voltage inspection services. So this is the annualized or the periodical inspection of any electrical system that you may have. Talk about it here because of wind really, but it's any electrical system, whether it's a wind turbine, a substation, a switchgear, an oil and gas asset. We have the experience in house to come out and do that annualized or periodical checks, and tick the boxes. Anyone who's aware of this service, of this type of work, it's systematic check of your system. It's not the repair work, it's not the remediation at this point, but these the next service line has cover off on that. So the high voltage cable termination and testing, focusing a lot on the testing services. That previous bullet point. Again, we have the capabilities in house to support E&T activities, termination and testing services. But not talking cables, if it is your repair work or remediation work or any electrical system, so again, we have the ability to support that remediation work. I don't think we can talk about HVT&T and grouting together without really addressing the scale at which there is a demand for both services in the marketplace right now. If you look at the UK alone, the pipeline of projects coming up is brand. If you widen that net out to the global pool projects that are in development and construction, it's massive. And I don't present this to give you an idea that we can cover all the bases, but we're certainly there to support the coming up in the wind sector. And with regards to some cables, inter-array cables, the grouting of your suction cans, of your foundations, of your addition pieces. So again, any of these are interesting, get in touch. UPS installation, repair and PPMs goes somewhat similar with our electrical services, but this is a managed service. So our ethos, especially the dream, but I'd say as a global company, is to build value add partnerships with businesses who have common values, common goals. And the UPS services is one of those services that we would deliver with a partner. And if you had a need for that service, you can contact with IKM, which obviously it suits us fine, but also we can work together with that partner to put you in contact with the correct people at the UPS partners to support that. Voting, it's a natural transition from our existing skill set. One of our existing skill sets related to our traditional oil and gas background is the hydraulic tensioning, hydraulic torquing, manual torquing services. And I always risk simplifying it too much, but it's the methodology remains the same. It's very let to see. It's just the bolts are longer, tools are deeper. So that hopefully gives an overview of where we sit in the renewables service marketplace. What's our point talking about SOCOT? If we don't cover off why gear oil is important to us, to you potentially as operators or as manufacturers. So what is anyone who's mechanically savvy understands that gear oil is the main lubricating component of a gearbox. A gearbox in a wind turbine specifically, although it's expensive with farting, is the most expensive and failure-prone component of a turbine. The purpose of that is to lubricate, reduce friction and wear between the moving parts, and essentially protect against corrosion, prevent that metal on metal wear, and obviously the added bonus that it dissipates the heat within the gearbox. So that natural heat exchanging property of the gear oil. We don't manage oil, it will degrade over time, and that results in oxidation, water ingress potentially if you have failed seals, particulate contamination. Temperature contamination is always a key issue here because any foreign debris within that system are preventing metal on metal wear, but if you've not managed your particulate well, you're causing additional stress in the system. What is the cost of that mismanagement? And I like the term mismanagement. I'll come on to. What's the cost of mismanagement or like a gearbox failure? I can put a number on that, but we're mismanaging that process, you potentially have very frequent, ineffective, inefficient, and reactive replacements. When there's an issue, is that issue resolved, which seems absolutely natural, but if we can plan in place to mitigate that reactiveness, then we should see an improvement, reduction in cost, improvement in effectiveness. Cost of production, mostly for a wind turbine asset, and for an operator and owner, you want your assets producing as much as possible. Seeing a wind, driving along the countryside and seeing a wind turbine down, that's essentially just point in no revenue being produced. So if you're an operator, obviously production is a very, very key part of that. The really worst case, beyond a loss of production is severe catastrophic damage causing the need for repair, or very worst case, full replacement, which comes with long lead times, extended downtime, a lot of manpower on the site, production losses, everything that previously covered. Some of these we've touched on, still on the topic of why is it all important and why can it fail. The leading causes of that gearbox failure or oil degradation. So unless you have contaminated lubricant in that system, it will, one, reduce the effectiveness of the lubrication. It will then increase that metal to metal contact and accelerate the wear in that system. Surface fatigue. So this a gearbox, a wind turbine gearbox specifically, is a very high load system. And with that system, if all these factors compounding, you're going to end up with high stress. Inefficient lubrication ultimately leads to surface fatigue, which leads to micropitting, and in this case, it's hard to maybe seeing that image there, but then you have gear tooth failures and going down that path of requiring a substantial repair. Contamination, one that's maybe less talked about, is grain gas. Anyone who's seen contaminated water, you see that actual emulsification, you get that reaction. You don't want that in your gearbox, obviously, and that can come from failing seals in your gearbox, condensation, if the environment is not managed correctly in the nacelle, or if it's particularly area that the turbines are in. All of this promotes corrosion in that system, oxidation of the oil. Again, going back to contaminant in your lubricant, ineffective lubrication. So this is what I mentioned earlier, and it's something that is really important. It's how you, as an operator, as an owner, any gear oil system, manage the introduction of new oil to the system, whether it's if you're refilling a system with a like for like oil, the process in which that's done. If you're draining existing oil and replacing it with a new oil, a new improved oil, for example, if that conversion process is not managed correctly, can lead to emulsification and a scene, especially a turbine gearbox in that emulsified state. It's like a soapy, waxy crud, and that process of that is real nasty. And it's something that I see a lot, is that mismanagement process, leading to further extended downtime, expensive, relatively expensive. You get 3 technicians on site scooping soap out of this area and trying to clean it. So very, very important, and that's a part of the process that we've gone off with our support. And then additive depletion. So one thing that isn't appreciated in gear oil or any oil product is beyond just lubrication. There's a lot of properties within that oil, or within any lubrication product, which are essential for its function. And over time, that properties are consumed. It's just a natural part of oil. And as you run the gearbox, as the oil's doing its job, those anti-wear and antioxidant properties reduce in effectiveness. And if you let your system run beyond sort of a reasonable time, or some of the other aspects we've talked about here are at play, you will see those properties degrade quicker, and then lead to a vicious cycle of additives are reduced. You then have less lubrication, leading to some micropitting, leading to particulate being into the central system. So many different things to manage to ensure an effective system, but these are things that are covered in the wikis. Generally, who is dealing with this today? And I'd like to give us an overview of how it's done, and we'll go on to how we can do it and how you can benefit from that. So oil is changed on a scheduled basis. Now that schedule changes from operator to operator, owner to owner. It tends to be on some sort of cycle, whether it's operational hours, 10,000 hours, just pulling them out in my head, or 5 to 7 years, which is fine. But without the condition of that oil being checked before you conduct your routine sort of conversion, to a few different things here. changing out oil that maybe doesn't need to be changed out. The systems ran very efficiently and effectively for 5 years. We don't have all of those issues like say, ingress or particulate contamination. Your properties are still in a reasonable level. So while scheduled maintenance or scheduled changes are great, you might be spending for no reason, essentially. So you might run that system beyond its reasonable time. If you were doing routine checks on the condition of your oil, you might have realized at the 3 year that your properties are reduced. You've got pitting issues. Any of those issues are covered off. So scheduling is great, but you need to do it on an educated basis to understand essentially to minimize your spend. Manual handling, I've seen some great images and some stories. The current way in which it's done is very, it can be very manual. You have 3, 4 wind turbine technicians on site using the nacelle lifts, apologies, the lift drums to the top of the nacelle and conduct that manually, which beyond being a laborious task, introduces a number of health and safety risks. Lifting loads, you've got contamination to the area. I think things that are covered off in the next part of the slide. All in all, though, the very manual process that we have can be used now by using wind turbine tanks to conduct the work. It's a long-term time, essentially, and we've covered off why production is key for these assets, and if we can speed that version or the clean time, your assets can be producing in a faster, get into production faster, but also can be brought back to a production level in a more effective and I've waffled actually through a lot of these challenges as I've spoken about how it's being done today, but to recover some of it. How it's done today can be very reactive, not condition based. Let's instead check our oil condition to educate ourselves as to when and why we should do a conversion. The operational costs of those wind turbine tanks doing that manual conversion would be considered ineffective time on asset. Are there other things that specifically on or in field your technicians can be doing? And we'll get onto why our process allows them to be in other places in the field. The manual handling and risk based factors. So that manual draining process and disposal or drainage of oil from the system introduces risks of spills to not only to the sort of ocean environment if we're offshore or onshore into the land, but also into your nacelle environment, which a substantial leak of any amount of it into your nacelle is obviously not a great and requires the due cleanup. The point that here that prolonged restart periods. When doing it manually, oil's not reduced in a filtered state. It's not it's not heated, which is off in a minute. Meaning that so you've had your techs on site, you've done all that conversion work. You've now got a gearbox system which is filled with new oil, but it's cool at ambient temperature, and to bring it back to a temperature condition, allow your turbine to cut in and start up, you have to have that gearbox heating process, which we can mitigate through the SOCOT process. All that being said, how can this process be improved? I think that's with the SOCOT, safe oil conversion of on and offshore turbines. Now, SOCOT is a equipment, but ultimately it is a process that we employ. So, waffle for 10 minutes on how it's done now and challenges that brings to the table. And all the learnings within the IKM group and how it's done in the moment. SOCOT was developed to be that sort of best-in-class product and process for oil changes, specifically on wind farms. Process doesn't differ too massively for other systems, but it is designed for that purpose. And it's designed to sort of tackle a lot of those issues that we've been over. Unorthodox to go straight into track record, but I think it's worthwhile because we're here with the technology catalogue and the technology being presented through these energy tech talks, which are fantastic. They'll all be in different phases of their sort of development. I just wanted to highlight that SOCOT process and technology isn't new. We've been successfully conducted since 2014, and I just wanted to show a little bit of the names of the sites have been on, and that's not exhaustive, but just that is new. It's a very tried and tested piece of equipment, well liked by a number of operators. That one-stop shop, as I've heard, little three words to say. One-stop solution is what we aim to bring to your organization and to your projects, and it's covered off in 5 very, very brief bullet points. That is, can analyze the oil to cover off where we talked about with reactive, not condition based. We will need samples. If you provide us samples of your existing oil in your system, we can do laboratory work to check cleanliness, additive amount, all the properties to then steer the next step. New and conduct any tests needed between an old oil and a new oil to make sure that if there's any left in the system, maybe a reaction, it's not going to cause that soapy emulsification. And all that's done to steer how we then move forward in the conversion process. In terms of the actual delivery of the project, we can supply that new oil. It's not a problem, although I know many operators have stock of their own oil because they know their fleet needs. In the process, we will receive your spent oil from your gearbox system, and we can take that onshore for disposal at an approved disposal facility for those products. The last 2 bullet points there are more so about the process, which we'll get into, but the method in which we conduct your conversions. We ensure that the gearbox is drained, flushed, any particulate left in that system is sort of mobilized into the fluid stream and is getting removed from that gearbox, because you can drain a gearbox, but if anyone's seen the terminology there is that there's bits in small furnaces where your particulates can settle, and if you don't mobilize those into your fluid stream and get them out of the system, conversion whilst you've got new oil in, it's in the system. So yeah, filtering and refilling of the new oil, we've covered that. All of this is a part of our package, and this addresses a lot of the issues that have come from how it's done. Excuse me. I'll actually do these ones here. So IKM developed the SOCOT unit, which is the all-in-one purpose-built oil conversion unit. So in the one package, which I'll get with you in the animation in a moment, there is built-in new oil tanks, so it'll mobilize offshore with fired new oil for the system. There's an empty waste tank for draining the existing oil, and there is pumps and specific pumping loops for new and old oil, so that there's no risk of cross-contamination between the two systems. It's got that heated process, so gear oil is introduced your system in a heated state to minimize that gearbox heating thing that was earlier. With turbines getting larger, some giant new being built where tower height just makes deployment from a CTV sensitive really less. SOCOT was built for CTV based deployment, which is kind of what that image, the drawing shows there. We work from the back of a CTV and deploy hoses up to the top of the turbine. With tower heights getting so large, we've also developed the SOCOT Flex unit, which is built in a very modular way. There's data sheets at the end of the presentation, which will be issued, I believe, to everyone, so you can get a feel for the modularity of it. But SOCOT Flex was designed that you can bring pieces of the package and you can build a package to meet your needs of your turbine. And they're built in a way that you can lift those pieces of equipment from your CTV up to your transition piece, or if it's a really high, right to the top if you need, if it's a very, very high system. And we can build a package around the needs as turbines get larger. As we can work from the CTV, that also means gearboxes are getting larger, so we need more tanks and more of different parts. So Flex can encapsulate that. We can be flexible around what your needs are for your turbine. It has the added benefit that the SOCOT Flex unit, if your project requires it, or you might just like the idea of it, you can take everything off your CTV. So you can travel to site, take everything off your CTV, deploy the IKM technicians, and your CTV and your remaining technicians can go elsewhere in the field and do bits of on your assets. And that's where we've really seen the benefit there is freeing up your time on site to go and do other important activities whilst IKM or on site doing your oil conversions. To complement all that, we've also designed our UN, our Unilift tanks, which just complement the systems of SOCOT and SOCOT Flex. So they are specifically built for the open sea environment. So they're aluminium, they're lightweight, they're internal bladders. They're a tank nonetheless, but we've built them in a way that makes the use of them in this environment very, very easy and safe with built-in spill trays, so that if in the event there was any leakage from a tank, it's not, or we're trying to minimize that spillage to the sea environment or to the sediments again. See animations now, Martina. We tried this yesterday and it was really, really choppy. So I'd ask if it's too choppy, let me know and I can maybe just I'd rather paint everyone with how it goes. What this next couple of slides covers off is we're hitting once again on the benefits of SOCOT.
Just
by a short animation.
Connor, just a small reminder that we need some time also for the Q&A, but I'll let you.
Spoken for a long time, sorry.
About
So
everything.
We'll breeze past this, Martina, and then we can move forward to the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll let you.
Animation work okay? Where we can see this the compactness on the back of the CTV from the SOCOT unit really benefits the ability to conduct that work. So there you to be carried from the CTV SOV using the return and feed umbilicals. And the animation here just covers the deployment to the nacelle. So hoses are lifted from the CTV up to the top. Very dynamic shot here. Then plugged into the ports on the gearbox to allow for drainage and refilling. have a patented dry break weak link connector system, which minimizes the risk exposed to the environment, which is a very, very key point, and one that we work with our clients to make sure the needs. To the drain and fill points. And the oils drain to our enclosed storage system. The waste storage system being filled. And then finally we have new clean filtered oil and heated oil introduced to the gearbox system. It's just the same process, but reverse. We pump up from the SOCOT into the gearbox. Keeping some time, Martina, I will breathe past this. The benefits that we see in the process in the closed loop nature of the system means we're reducing spillage to the environment, we're reducing the potential of introducing particulates or any contamination into your new oil system. Then oils drained directly from your gearbox system into our inbuilt storage tanks and taken ashore, and there's no manual handling of spent oils. It just introduces some risks, spillage. The oils taken to your gearbox, it's cleaned, it's filtered, and it's heated, reducing that start time, increasing your available production time, allowing you to get going faster compared to doing it manually. The drain and pump solution removes that manual handling burden from the technicians, allowing them to be on site doing more important activities than lugging 20-litre drums of oil into a gearbox. Line there, ultimately, with SOCOT, we can deliver a more effective, efficient, safer method for your oil conversions. And they will on there. So, Martina, correct me if I'm wrong, all the slides are issued to the attendees, is that right?
Sorry?
The presentations issued to the attendees.
It's possible, yeah.
See, covering over data sheets and case studies if it's being issued, or if you require these, if you'd like to see more of the case studies, do just get in touch.
Yes, and a reminder to everyone that you can contact them directly via the contact box in their tech page.
To the end, Martina, thanks for pushing me on time. I didn't realize I'd spoken for quite so long.
It's good. It was a great presentation. Thank you, Connor and Scott. It's great to see how SOCOT is already making a difference in the field. But let's go now through some questions. I see some of them coming in already. How are draining and filing hoses connected to turbine?
Draining and filling hoses is the turbine. I'll let Scott handle this. So, questions if he's still around.
Yeah, still here. Let me have a chance to say something. Yeah, so essentially they're just lifted up using the lifting arrangements at the top of the nacelle, and then connected to the filling and ports on the gearbox itself. So yeah, we'd work with you to find out what the correct connections are and then make them up. Hope that answers your question, but please If you want more details, let me know.
And is the new oil the same oil that was drained out, only clean, filtered, and heated?
So yeah, I suppose that's sort of dependent on the situation. Yep, absolutely can do that. Or if you are looking to change the oil, then that can be done as well. In either case, you can do an intermediate sort of cleaning operation, sort of to flush the gearbox before putting in the fresh oil. But that's definitely something that you would want to do if you are changing the oil, especially if there is any kind of compatibility issues between the two oils.
Thank you, Scott. I have here one more. What kind of feedback have you received from operators already using SOCOT?
It's really been very, very positive feedback. I think it's a service that's yeah, as you can see from the track record, it's definitely been embraced. I think probably the use of it's maybe fallen off a little bit recently, you know, as with all the pressures that everyone's seeing. But I think that there is a compelling case for it in terms of the quality of the management of the fluid sort of within the gearbox. You know, it is clean that's going in there. It's not sort of like just going in. And so I think that that's the kind of thing that you have to do to ensure the longevity of the gearboxes. But yeah, no, we've had really, really positive feedback from all of our customers. And I mean, I think one of the things Connor said, you know, this is an established technology, but the applications of it are evolving all the time. You know, kind of, we didn't have time to go through all the sort of the other things around cooling medium and the hydraulics, you know, which have big advantages as well. And then, you know, there are other applications that are currently in the pipeline that we are hoping to sort of bring to the market soon using this, you know, proven system.
Thank you. And so the lifting arrangements on the nacelle mean no working at height with personnel, correct?
So yeah, I mean, it depends on which way you're doing things. If you're just lifting the hoses up, then yeah, you will have to have personnel in the nacelle to connect it. But, you know, obviously there's a lot less work for them to do to sort of connect up a couple of hoses versus taking up all the oil and handballing it into the system.
I have another one here. Does the SOCOT solution have a software which monitors and predicts when this gear oil can be changed to prevent breakdown of the gearbox?
So no, we can do oil testing, but sort of it's not a sort of a permanent kind of system, so it doesn't continuously monitor. It would be we would need to have sort of samples sent back to us that we can then analyze.
We would work with the operator owner with their condition monitoring system. They would have those systems in place ready. Yeah, as Scott said, sampling and education is needed done.
And let's have one more for today. Does IKM have their own CTVs?
We do have one as part of the larger group, but it's not a service that we in general offer.
I think let's leave it at that for today for terms of time. But if you have any more questions, feel free again to contact IKM directly via their tech page on their contact box, or send us an email and we'll connect you to them. Thank you again, Connor and Scott, for the great presentation, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. This was the last Energy Tech Talks webinar of the season, but we'll be taking a short break over the summer, but we'll be back in September with a new lineup of exciting webinars. In the meantime, you can watch recordings of all past sessions at technologycatalog.com/webinars. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming events, tech insights, and energy innovations. Wishing you all a great day or evening, and see you after the summer.
Thanks, Martina.
Thank you, Connor and Scott.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks to everyone for joining.